All right, Stuart, it was only a matter of time before this happened, and I wanted to address it and talk to you about it because I think it's a potentially a bigger deal than just a single person making a comment.
Yeah, I've been skirting around this issue a little bit in some of the podcasts because, see, I come from what you're referring to here is some mainstream Christian people chiming in. How would you word this? Do you want to sort of cite the comment or paraphrase the comment?
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost wondering. I took some screenshots. If I do put them up there, I will take the name away out of courtesy, even though it's not like a person's name; it's just a screen name, right? But still, I don't want to shine light directly on an individual. But there was one of our episodes where someone chimed in with like a loving Jesus kind of comment, which is all well and good.
Hmm.
But then I engaged with that a little bit and just tried to gently sort of stretch, because they were basically saying, you guys got it wrong, right? And that sort of quickly led to a whole bunch of Bible verses being cited, which, again, whatever. I respect anyone who memorizes Bible verses, but to me, that's very surface level stuff. If that's sort of all you're doing is putting it out there. But the thing about it is the overall context of it, I think, is important, because we could easily say it's just one person making a comment, but I feel like there's a hell of a lot of people potentially out there who are going to share similar or the same beliefs, and some of those people are in the government and have this. And basically, the whole gist of it was that we're wrong, and we are pulling people away from what the truth actually is. And if you don't believe these very specific and short sentences, then you're going to burn in hell for all of eternity. And it's a big deal, because I feel personally like that in and of itself is one of the biggest linchpins, in addition to the abduction phenomenon as well, why people are not getting that disclosure that they want from a head of state or whatnot, because it goes into the religious aspect of it. It absolutely does.
Yeah, well, I touched on this in some earlier podcasts where I know some of my Christian friends view this whole phenomena as evil. And I even asked some of our guests about that, whether they've encountered this kind of perspective, and they replied, yes, they have. Now, I've come from a mainstream or Orthodox Christian background, and in the past, to be fair, I might have shared that perspective in the past, but I've been on this journey, and initially, when I heading down this track, I felt a compulsion to defend what I was finding out and exploring. But I've stopped doing that now because I kind of leave people to where they are. So I respect those kind of comments. But I also mentioned on one of our very first podcasts that I feel that the leaders of some of these Orthodox mainstream churches aren't really supporting people on this issue. Now, I told you from first-hand experience, I've spoken to some ministers here and some who are heads of mega churches, and one person in particular just didn't want to talk about it. And I didn't push it. But it really made me wonder, when this subject emerges in our collective consciousness, which it is now, how are they going to deal with that when these sort of people come forward?
I mean, in a way, we just saw, uh, and I think it is a really good. I hope this doesn't come out the wrong way, but I think it's a perfect example, actually, of how vehemently opposed someone might be to the things that we're talking about and exploring here. And I do believe that anyone who is so shut off from it and scared of it and opposed of it hasn't investigated it, and they're potentially not even open to hearing, give it a listen, rather than just say, we are leading people away from Jesus. I mean, we talk about Jesus a heck of a lot, and this comment put words in my mouth that I didn't say, and I corrected that, but because I won't stand for that kind of thing. But all in all, I mean, they were respectful, and professional, as it were. But I quickly saw that it was going to be a circular conversation. Like, you're going to say a thing, I'm going to say a thing, and nothing's going to happen, right? It's just going to be a waste. So I invited them to talk with us, and I did say debate, because that's absolutely what would happen. And you know what? I'm open for it. If that particular person or anybody else out there wants to debate with us, if you think that we're the devil and we're trying to steal your souls or something, let's talk about it. But but with that, I don't want to have someone just come and say Bible verse after Bible verse. I want to have an actual conversation about it.
That's going to be a difficult situation to navigate because that's pretty much exactly what they'll do because I've been in this situation. Now, part of my journey, as I might have explained on a previous podcast, is one of the early things that happened to me was I had some astral projection experiences. And I went to my Baptist church at the time and tried to tell the minister and some other people there. And I felt a slight ostracization where they kind of pushed me away when I started talking about those things and basically told me to stop talking about it and stop exploring it. So I know that's what it's like. And that's just dipping your toe into this subject, really. So I was disappointed that I went to my church with an esoteric, mystical, spiritual experience I had, which I wanted to share, and I just got shut down. So I'm already aware of this dynamic. And I have to admit to you, Mike, I was upset and even a little bit angry at the time. I'm talking about something from probably 25, 30 years ago now. So I'm a lot further down the track. I've kind of made peace with it. And the reason I was able to make peace with it was because I realized I would have been like that earlier. I would have reacted the same way. So that's why I talk about this incremental disclosure too, because I've had to learn slowly over time. And one of the things I mentioned in the Tony Garzi interview recently was that these days I listen to the message without judgment. I don't, for a little while, for initially worry about who it's coming from, who said it. And this is a problem in every paradigm now. So, for example, I'm wary to bring this up, but say politics, for example, it doesn't really matter who's saying something. If it's got validity, from my point of view, if it's wise, if it has wisdom, then I'm supporting it. I'm not looking through the lens of, well, that was said by the party that I don't like. Or conversely, that came from the party I do like, so everything they say is correct. I can't be like that, Mike. I wouldn't be able to, I wouldn't have come as far as I have in my journey if I'd been like that and stayed like that.
I couldn't agree more. It's with the religious side of things. You know, this topic will push some people's buttons. It will, but it challenges you. Like, you know, I remember talking in our first like episode or second episode. Like, I went to Sunday school and then I became an altar boy. I'm baptized and confirmed. You know, I'm Roman Catholic. Happy to say it. You know, but at the same time, I've gone off on my own and done my own explorations, and I do believe the Catholic Church has a lot more to teach than they actually do. And I believe in Jesus the same way a lot of other people do, but I think I believe in a little bit different of a Jesus, and that's because I've gone out and explored it in all, not just in investigating UFOs and sightings and things like that, but also I've explored my spirituality, where a lot of people maybe they don't want to do that or they won't do that, especially if there's a specific, like a lot of times if people go through a trauma or an addiction, they tend to, not necessarily all the time, but there's a specific, I don't know if it's, I don't know what the right word is, help me out here, but a specific genre of a
Yeah.
religion that they'll sort of end up in. And then, you know, perhaps it was because of that they got through their trauma or their addiction or whatever, and that's wonderful. But then they become almost in a way stuck into like, this is all that there is. These are the words that were spoken by God, and God said nothing else. And this is, you have to take it for what it says. I mean,
This whole journey takes courage, Mike, and I'm not just talking about the religious journey, but this journey into disclosure as well. And it takes discernment. So this whole thing, from my perspective, is dynamic. Now, I've told you something privately before, which I'll share on the podcast. I'm absolutely a follower of Jesus, but if it had turned out that Jesus was a phony or he couldn't be trusted, I would have dumped him a long time ago. But repetitively he comes up as a true person, you know, a true savior and guide, if you want to, whatever lens or way you want to talk about, a redeemer. There's a lot of different ways of looking at it. So I'm on board with that. But my perspective on some Old Testament information has shifted, which is very common for a mystic or a Gnostic to a place for them to land. Then mainstream Christian will get into an argument or discussion with you about the validity of some of the Gnostic texts. And, you know, I know that path. I've been down that path, explored that path for many years. And I'm not really up for arguments about that. And that's not coming from a place of Mike, I'm 100% right. There's no need to argue about it, but it's just not productive.
True. Okay. True. 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 Um, in a way, though, I'm sort of welcoming the debate from this person or anybody else because to sort of shine a light on it, because I think a lot of people in the UFO community, they probably have already explored their spirituality in ways that the general population hasn't, and they might not realize that this is a really big sticking point issue that if let's take out the interdimensional extra temporal, let's just say, and I'm not saying this is what it is, but because I know it's not, let's just pretend that it's only physical and they're from other planets in our solar system. We know it's a heck of a lot more complicated than that, but if we just take that little inkling and it's put out into everybody's consciousness, like, this is a fact, a lot of people are going to be like, well, what about my faith? And this is why this is the core question that we even started this channel to explore this topic in the first place, and that's what we try to um, talk about in every conversation. However, if that's all that we talked about, there'd be like 4 people listening, right? I mean, because it's a niche within a niche, but that I think, does that make sense?
It 100% does. And fortunately for me, I'd already been down this path. I haven't solved every mystery of the world. I don't know if I ever will, but I've gotten some answers that I'm satisfied with as I've gone down this journey. So it's also not new for me to question my own belief system, which might seem like a weird thing for a reverend to say, but you'd be very surprised about the conversations that clergy have in private when the congregation isn't around. So I'm privy to those, and also through seminary, some hard questions are asked. I've mentioned before that religious leaders, church organizations, religious organizations are aware of a lot more than they're talking about. And that's another topic that upset me greatly for a while there. Okay, I'll tell you what 2 different ministers said to me. One of them said, "Yeah, I'm aware of a lot of the things you're talking about, Stuart, but my role here is to teach basically a simple Sunday school version of the belief system, a lowest common denominator version." And I took issue with that because I said I had to come up through that where you were basically that system in my youth, where you were basically not you, but the church was withholding information. I could have gotten to this end point a lot quicker if you'd just had been all cards on the table rather than wasting my time. But I guess it's part of the journey, and some people are still there, I suppose. Um, Another minister told me I'd get chucked out of my own church if I started talking about that, but I know exactly what you're talking about. So this has happened more than once to me. It's kind of crazy, Mike. It's like this in any industry, right? So I'm not going to mention particular industries, but I could, but I'm not going to. Everyone will
Oh,
know
come
from
on.
their everyone will everyone will know from their own experience that there are things that are told to the customers that aren't entirely correct. There are things that aren't
Yeah.
revealed to the customers that aren't completely correct, because it'll be detrimental if all cards are on the table. It's not a new thing, and I'm sorry and disappointed to tell you that that's still the case in mainstream religions.
um Awesome. I agree with all that. And to go back, I remember, like, in our very first episode, you and I were talking, and our original mission was to specifically and potentially only talk with spiritual leaders from around the world in different denominations about this topic. And you sort of in what you just said there as well, you pretty much head that off at the past, I guess, is the corny phrase, because you're like, well, I don't know if we're going to get too far with that, and it's
It's a tricky one. I'll tell you one example. You might have to snip this out. So when I was at university, I was initially doing a marketing degree. One of the lecturers said that when a new drug is being tested, the pharmaceutical company they'll organize about 10 different research projects with different specialists, different universities, and then they'll put forward the results that support their agenda, their outcome. Then they'll tell the other universities, you can't reveal this information that you've discovered about our product because this is proprietary knowledge. So when I finally met a doctor who works in the pharmaceutical industry, I asked him, "Is this real? Like, this is what I was told, but it seems unbelievable." And the guy, Doctor is his name, he said, "I was there when we used to do that. That's absolutely correct." So
wow.
Yeah, so I want to be careful about bringing. You might have to snip that out, but I heard that. I was doubtful. Then I heard from someone in the industry who said that's exactly how we do it. But that lecturer told you the truth. I get it. You know, if you're looking at a business model, then you're going to have different outcomes to whether you're just straight out trying to help people. So that's unfortunately some of these mega churches follow a business model, as you know. That friend of mine's church definitely does. Now, I don't want to come from a place of judgment here, Mike, but I'm just telling you the things I found out along the way. So there are reasons why companies, big churches won't tell you everything they know. Now, I'm not suggesting that some of these mega churches know everything that we're exploring, but as I mentioned in one of the very early podcasts, there's a group of ministers who I came in contact with who are all over this information, and they're in a really interesting, almost disclosure sort of situation where together, I've spoken with them. They'll share information that the type of information that some of our guests have shared, but they'll only share it with each other and not with their congregation because they're kind of stuck too. Like, how do we bring this forward now? It's a tricky situation for them as well.
So why do you think that is? With the how do we bring this forward? Is it or could it be because the bringing it forward then is potentially in opposition to what they are preaching, and they're fearful that the people might leave their church and take their donations elsewhere? Or, no, I mean, it's a serious question.
No, you're
Or,
on the right track. Yeah.
okay, or is it that they just don't know what to make of it themselves, and maybe they're on a personal level, they're scared to talk about or not be knowledgeable about it, or something like that?
Okay, there's a bit of both. Now, I'll address the first one. A lot of my minister colleagues work as ministers for their primary source of income. It's their job. Now, in my situation, I'm an independent minister. I am involved in a couple of churches, but I don't draw any money from any church. So the great thing about being independent is I can just say what I want to say. And that's why I'm able to do this podcast with you. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, but some of these other ministers are like, oh my God, my goodness, if I come out and say that, that's it. I got no, what do I do now? This is all I know how to do.
Okay, interesting point. I'll toss out there, of course, without naming any names. There's been a couple of people who either we've reached out to, or potentially the other way around. But as the conversations go or the planning goes, it doesn't come to fruition, and I wonder if that could be part of or all of the reason.
Well, there's also the second point that you brought up, which they are trying to navigate this. And I don't mean all ministers, but I mean the ones I've come in contact and learnt this about. So that group of ministers who are talking together, they're trying to navigate the disclosure information together, which is a beautiful thing. So they're sharing information that they're discovering, things they're hearing about, cases. We can't talk about who told us what, but you could say something like, "Yeah, I had a member of the congregation come forward and tell me this, which absolutely correlates with what we're hearing about here." It's a kind of an exciting level to that too. There's a true level to that where they're really trying to understand what's happening, but there's two factors at work. Number one, that's the end of my job and my so-called career. And number two, I'm trying to navigate this thing myself. So how am I going to lead other people towards this?
Interesting. Well, that's also what I like about us here. I mean, we don't get paid to do this either,
Mm.
and we are independent of everyone and everything here, so we can, say whatever the heck we want to say as well. And right from the start, we both said to each other and agreed, like, this, we're not making this podcast so dollars can be generated. Now, if dollars do get generated enough to start paying those monthly fees that I'm personally paying, that's a wonderful thing. But if ever it got to the point where it starts making oozes and oozes money, I would simply donate a majority or all of it after the admin cost to research and stuff. Like, we're not here, for that reason. And that's another thing maybe that separates us from some other podcasts out there.
Yeah, I really respect that about you, Mike, too. Also, I want to briefly add that that dynamic I was talking about losing your job or losing your position in life is very prevalent in circles in academia too. So academics don't want other academics coming forward with new discoveries that basically negate their discoveries, and they could lose their tenure. And all that's going on too.
Ego. Okay,
I
ego and
know.
greed. Ego, greed, and fear. Like those are the three uh,
Here's the
nasty
good news,
words.
though. I want to add this on I want to end this on a positive thing. And I've mentioned this a bunch of times that the journey is and always will be an individual journey. So it's about making your own discoveries, learning things for yourself, learning what's true for you, what's true in your own experience. Um, Not secondhand, not someone saying, okay, here's the whole framework, Mike, go and run with that. Because it might be a useful guide, but it's not the be all and end all. There's far more to explore and learn.
Excellent. That's awesome. And I don't know if this is positive or negative, but my final thought is that the people who are most vehemently opposed to the conversations that we're having are the people who need to hear it the most. I'm sorry, but that's just the truth. And we might not be right, but you have to at least give it a listen. But in any event, just wanted to do a micro episode here with you, and we'll see you all back here real soon.